Mother of darkness, mother of light, earth beneath us, soul in flight, songs of love and
Sisters of the shining moon, heaven, earth, and sea, I call upon you in this hour, bring magic unto me. Brothers, oh, the cauldron cries, it singeth unto me the songs of Mother Goddess and of Father in the tree.
Hello, my lovelies. This is Paisley Wild, and we are off adventuring into the spaces between. And we are being broadcast live on Truth Frequency Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live, and on YouTube. And if you are listening in on YouTube, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. And yeah, I got to tell you, I've noticed that there's people listening on the show, and I get a lot of listeners, but you forget to hit the like button. So you should hit the like button. Just saying. And no matter how you are listening in, you just make sure you do stop in and say hello. And I want to thank you again for joining me here on my spiritual journey, and I hope that you want to keep coming back and learning with me. So, if you want to support the store, or the show, excuse me, we do have an Etsy store that is www.etsy.com/Monarch Mountain Studio. And that's MTN for mountain. It's Monarch Mountain Studio. And you can also check out the website, that is www.thespacesbetween.live. And the call lines are open tonight, barring some gremlin, because those happen. Unfortunately. And that number is 213-233-3998. Or if you're across the pond in the UK, it is 44203-393-2871. So, hi everyone. If you've been listening to Dawn and Brent on Paranormal Portal, I understand they had some things to have everyone listen to because they are goofballs. And so if you're a little late getting over here, that is all good. And then if on Truth Frequency Radio, Duke will be on after I am at the top of the hour. So I don't know what he's talking about, but I hear it's good stuff. So I think that's the news, the headlines, and all that stuff. And so last weekend we were talking about archetypes, so I'm planning on continuing that tonight. And then I did want to kind of touch in on shamanism just a little bit because I didn't kind of glossed over it last night, and I feel like I should have touched in on it. And I've talked about shamanism in the past, and so I figured we'd just kind of review real quick again. So just basically the definition of a shaman is a person who is regarded as having access to and influence in the world of good and evil spirits, especially among some peoples of Northern Asia and North America. And typically such people enter a trance state during a ritual and practice divination and healing. And that is from the Oxford Dictionary. And so just what is shamanism, just real quick? And I know I've talked about it in the past, just to restate that again. And unfortunately, I do have to kind of study some things like 12 times before they sink into my noggin. So if I see something in the course of a show, often it's off the cuff and I don't have my notes in front of me to refer to. So yeah, that happens. So the word shaman actually originates from the Tungus tribe in Siberia. And it's something that anthropologists started using to refer to the spiritual and ceremonial leaders among the indigenous cultures worldwide. So nowadays, shaman or shamanism can be used to describe the ancient spiritual practices of those indigenous cultures. However, there are shamans in today's world as well. And The Thada. Yeah, there's a couple of them, I think, but yeah, Thada is one, but I don't know how to spell it either, Sonia. So basically, it's kind of a universal spiritual wisdom, um, and is very much rooted in nature, and it's and often very very ritualistic. So there's a connection with nature. Is a healing of self and community. It's a spiritual practice. Often it's a pilgrimage to sacred places. And there's a vision and ceremony involved as well. And so the ceremonies are generally to honor the spirits of nature and help promote harmony and balance. And it's a path that just never ends. And it's believed that so long as the ceremonies, the shamanic ceremonies continue, the world will continue. Um, Learning to approach and connect with sacred places is an intrinsic part of being a shaman. And by honoring natural wonders such as rivers, lakes, mountains, caves, etc., we often reawaken and reinvigorate the energy of the land. In spiritual practice, it's not just during the rituals and such, it's also a daily practice that allows for continued and exponential growth of both the body and soul. And the goal is to create an internal and external harmony with creation. Healing of self and community is not just the health of the individual, but it's the health of the entire community. And that includes people, plants, animals, and all of life. And a lot of today's society doesn't really get that one. And then shamanism is very much rooted in nature. Power of the Mother Earth, the spirits, the ancestors, the ancient ones, all of that is very much a big part of the shamanic path. So last night I had a list that I talked about of signs that you're a witch. And so I just in Googling, I found another list, but for shamanism, and it made me giggle because there's some overlap here. The first one, of course, you feel strongly connected to nature. Yes, I would agree with that 100%. You enjoy solitude and hard to find it to fit in with others. Now, solitude, yes. I think definitely both those who, both witches and shamans, both very much enjoy the solitude and often seek the solitude, especially for different internal rituals and such. But I also think they very much connect with others. It kind of depends on the time and the place. But remember, these are people. And just like any other group of people, you're going to have some that are more introverted, some that are more extroverted, some that are a little bit of both, depending on the situation. So I don't know that avoiding others or not connecting with others is an accurate statement. Now, across the board, when it comes to shamanism, from my research and such, most on the shamanic path have had some sort of near death or out of body or other mystical experience, either 100% real or 100% or created, and in other words, or ceremonially. And because there must be a death and rebirth, a death of the previous life and rebirth into your current life or your current incarnation as a shaman. And it's just another way to gain wisdom and the connection with the spirit world. You maybe have felt a subtle healing energy in your hands. So it says here that many shamans are born with the capacity to act as curanderos, or masters of living energy. In other words, they may have the ability to control and manipulate energy in their own body and those of others. And, this is something that energy workers, regardless of their tradition or path, do. It's not just the shamanic path, it is just those who are energy workers. You have the ability to read others. So some shamans are born with the gift of vision or capacity to look at others and see the illness that they may be carrying, or spiritual obstacle that must be overcome. And I think this is true also for witches, and spiritual leaders in general, not just shamans, because I know that I've encountered people who, after being around them and interacting with them and connecting with them a bit, I can tell that there's an issue. I can't always tell what it is, especially not at first. And I'm not a shaman. So it's not just a shamanic thing, it is across the board. And yeah, just so you know, the call line is open, but if I don't realize that you're on hold, you may need to remind me in the chat room. So I do have the chats open. Hello. Looks like we've got Cam and Gemini and Suzanne and Sonia and Renee are all in the chat room. Anybody else? Nope, that's it right at the moment. Hello. Thanks for the... Yes, my fireplace. It's my fakey fireplace, by the way. Bear Doctor? I don't know. Oh, hi, Don. Hello. So let's see what else is here. You may have ancestors who are healers or medical herbalists. So this is something that, just the same with witches, is kind of an overlap. I think there's a lot of us, maybe not all, but many of us, in our ancestry somewhere, there is someone who was a shaman or descended from shamans. So yeah, I think we're all connected that way. Or medical herbalists. You may have vivid or prophetic dreams. Again, something that witches may do, or other spiritual leaders. And but shamans generally have a very natural ability to travel between this world and the spirit world, and often are more able or capable of crossing the veil or piercing the veil. You may be spirited by or visited by spirit animals. So this is going back to the nature bit. When shamans are connecting with the spirit world, often they're also connecting with spirit animals, and they may be more familiar with them or closely associated. You can maybe sometimes see things that others cannot see. Again, just like other spiritual leaders. Not necessarily religious leaders, I mean spiritual. There's a big difference between the two. But yes, witches can often see things as well. So very, very similar. This is why, like last night when we were talking, Nace had a list of different names, shaman, witch, wizard, and a couple others that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. But yeah, they're very often interlinked and interwoven, especially in our society today when people don't really understand the distinctions between the different groups or the names or how they're associated with the various traditions. It's just a small distinction, I suppose. In the past, especially, shamans may have had a physical deformity or physical abnormality that set them apart from the rest of their tribe or their group. This may be like a club foot, a lazy eye, wandering eye, maybe a twitch, hump. I don't know. Or you may have been in that near-death experience. If it was a legitimate near-death, not just a ritualistic type one, you may have missing a limb or an eye. So I suppose you could say Odin was almost shamanic in that respect because he was missing an eye, very connected with the spirit world. So there's some crossing of the paths there. You may feel a calling to help, to heal or ease the suffering of others. Again, this is something that those on either the shamanic path, the witch path, the pagan path, any of us, we may feel these same things as well. So a lot of crossover, a lot of similarities. Some are very much legitimate. Some are a little bit more neo-shaman or neo-pagan, and not quite as true. Because something in my research that I've noticed is there is the old ways and there's a reinvention of the old ways or new interpretation of the old ways. And it doesn't mean that they're less or they're not as valid or as important. It's just a different interpretation. And so the connection is often slightly different. And the interpretation is slightly different. So, like in a lot of rituals today, because we live in houses that are built differently, maybe we can't have candles, for instance. So instead of lighting a candle or lighting a fire or having a cauldron over a fire, we may instead use like a votive candle, a little bitty one, or maybe an electric candle to symbolize, the candle or the fire. So we've had to reinterpret some of the old things into today's society, especially for those of us who live in smaller confined areas like apartments and whatnots. I'm really glad I live in a house on a lot of acres. I don't think I could live in an egg crate like that, but some people really thrive in that kind of a community. I need a buffer between me and the neighbors. I'm just saying. So yeah, it's quite often I see these lists have a lot of similarities. Bleh, I can't talk. Because there are a lot of similarities between the different paths, and they're often just interpretations for ourselves or for our path or our tradition that makes sense to us. For instance, I follow Hecate, or Hecate, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And I have this visualization of her, I have this interpretation of her, of who she is and what she does and where she's from and everything else. But it's my interpretation. That's not saying that someone else wouldn't have a different interpretation. I see her as very benevolent, and others may see her as more scary or negative or dark, like the moonless night dark, the scary dark. I see her more as like, I'm warm and comfy under the covers dark. So it's, that the whole personal interpretation, which is part of the reason why I tell everybody study, research, because it's important. Because different things are going to resound with you in different ways, in different traits or characteristics that are featured or adopted by the deities are going to connect with you more, and you may connect with different paths or traditions more. For instance, I don't connect very much with the Greek gods and goddesses. I just don't. It's not my thing. Maybe it's because I'm Germanic in my background. And, well, Germanic and Celtic, actually. It's interesting what you find out when you start searching your family tree. And say it really, really varies a bit. And yeah, do your research. That's the biggest thing. Even when doing research, set your intention. For me, when I'm getting ready to research something, my intention, I set it to learn. I want to learn something. I don't know what I want to learn. I just want to learn something. Because I think it's important to keep growing and keep learning. And here I am, no longer a spring chicken, but I still want to learn. I still want to educate my brain and add new information. I am an avid reader, so I am always reading something. Not always good for me stuff. Often it's fiction, because I like reading. I have a lot of books, but I also have a lot of things to study, and not just for my own path, but also like Minnie Paisley. She wants to learn things too, and how can I teach her if I don't study too? If I'm not learning the latest? Not sure about this whole Common Core math. We haven't gotten there yet. Fortunately, she's only in kindergarten, but at some point it may be a thing. I don't know. We'll see. But reading, I can help her with that. How to put a sentence together, I can help her with that one too, generally. May have to get a hold of her sister-in-law and see if, maybe she can teach her the math, because she's better at it than I am. So we'll see. But yeah, that's just finding your own strengths and your own weaknesses and your own challenges, because they are going to vary a little bit as you're learning. Also, why I really recommend keeping a journal. So I didn't have my notes out in front of me last night when I was talking about shamanism, so I needed to research it and come back to it tonight. And that's just the way of it. And I had to find those notes. And I didn't. Well, I did, but I found more notes, and I like these notes better because I think they're a better interpretation or better information even than what I found originally. And that is important as well, because as you're growing on your path and as you're learning new things, your interpretation or your understanding of the concepts is going to change. It's kind of like learning how to tell time on a clock, a dial clock. Okay, you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, etc., etc. Okay, you know that those are the numbers, right? Well, what about, stop and think about it. You're also counting by fives, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, etc., etc. And you also are using fractions. There's quarter, half, 3/4, full. So you're learning multiplication. Well, if the little hand is on the 1 and the big hand is on the 3, it's a quarter after 3. How do you know it's a quarter after 3? It's 3 times 5 is 15. 15 is 1/4 of 60. Okay, that's a lot of math. Sorry, just threw it at you. But for Minnie Paisley right now, she just knows that she can count by fives, 5, 10, 15. And when she gets a little bit older, it'll click and she'll be surprised. Oh, 3 times 5 is 15. Because I counted by 5 3 times. And she won't recognize that today, but in a year or two, maybe 3, where she gets to that point where she's understanding math more, it'll be an aha moment. And I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be good. So it's just similar with your journal. The things that you're writing down today as you're learning about your path and your practice and your faith and your rituals and spirituality and all of that, the things you don't understand today, you will understand tomorrow or the day after. And you'll be able to go back to those same concepts and be like, oh, that's what this is. And it's good. So, the importance of learning. Don't forget how to learn. And then, so Cameron just mentioned in the chat room that he's always been interested in Hecate or Hecate, and actually you can pronounce it either way. And she was the goddess of magic, witchcraft, the night, moon, ghosts, and necromancy. And she had power over heaven, earth, and sea. And so she's an older deity. She's considered one of the 3 faces of the mother, maid, and the crone. Maid, mother, crone, if I can do it right. And we'll go into her a little bit more just before we hit the break here. Supposedly she helped Zeus defeat the Titans. But she's also a very prominent figure in Celtic mythology. So, and there's some that say that she, is a deity or a divinity of the underworld, partly because she was a companion of Persephone when Persephone went to Hades. Yes, Renee, there's been some problems in TFR, some technological issues. I'm not quite sure what the dealio is there. And I will mention it to the IT guys. I'm not sure what the deal. Just because, stuff. Yeah, Persephone. Excuse me. So yeah, when Persephone was brought to the underworld by Hades, or to Hades. Oh, jeez. When she was brought to the underworld, um, she was comforted by Hecate. So even though I don't really follow the Greek traditions, I know that Hecate was part of that. So she's just an older deity, kind of like Cernunnos, one of the elder gods, if you will. And so she's been around for a while and is very prominent, just like Cernunnos is, in several different traditions. And kind of fascinating. Yes, Crossroads and Keys are, yes, Hades. Sorry, it's been a long day. Minnie Paisley has a bit of a flu bug that she's dealing with, and we spent most of the day in the urgent care because her fever was a bit high. So my brain is fried. I'm really glad I had notes. So, and just like that, we are at the bottom of the hour. It is 30 minutes past, so we will be right back after the break, and we will get back into the archetypes. So thanks for joining, you guys, and I will.
Brothers of the shining moon, heaven, earth, and sea, I call upon you in this hour, bring magic unto me. Brothers, oh, the cauldron cries, it singeth unto me the songs of Mother Goddess and of Father in the tree.
Hello, my lovelies. This is Paisley Wild, and we are off adventuring into the spaces between. We are being broadcast live, of course, and the call lines are open. So if you want to give me a call, that number is 213-233-3998. Or if you're in the UK, it is 44203-393-2871. And you are always welcome to send me an email at wildpaisley@gmail.com. That's W-I-Del... I can't spell tonight. I'm sorry. It's WILDEPAISLEY@gmail.com. So, yeah, it's been one of those days, and I have almost had another pot of coffee because I need a nap. Actually, I'm just going to go to sleep right after this, probably, because I'm tired. I don't know how y'all can stay up so late. I know some of you are East Coasters. Goodness. So, last week, talking about the archetypes, we talked about the mother archetype. So, tonight, we're going to talk about the father archetype. Yes, Minnie Paisley, I hope she feels better soon. Oh my gosh. It was crazy, crazy fever. 103 in a little one. And Doc says she doesn't have flu or pneumonia or any of those fun things. It's just a chest cold with a high fever. So we'll be keeping an eye on her. So yeah, even though I'm hoping to go to bed, I won't be sleeping hard. So yes, thank you, Gemini. So the father archetype is usually the consort of the mother goddess. And that's kind of a no-brainer. He's usually the father of several of the other important gods, and may also be considered the father of mankind. Now, as the masculine half of the all-encompassing life force, the god is usually represented in association with either the horned animals of the forest, or the sun, and in his guise of as god of the hunt, he may appear as a man wearing a headdress with horns or antlers, kind of like Kununos, and or even with the head of a stag or a goat. So, and his role is twofold. He assists humans in their need for sustenance in the form of wild game. He also protects animals in the wild, ensuring the delicate balance of life on Earth, which is a good thing. Now, in the earliest hi Dee. In the earliest forms of Wicca, the horned god had a very strong association with fertility, and this is still the case in quite a few of the traditions today, or the various yes. And in addition to the Celtic Kununos, the horned god, he may be represented by the Greek god Pan, the English mythological figure of Herne, or the Welsh god Bran, among others. And related representation, of course, is the Green Man, which I mentioned that with Kununos last night. And the Green Man is a mysterious ancient archetype which has been found around the world and has been depicted throughout Europe as a human face, either composed of or surrounded by vines, leafy branches, and other images of foliage. And the father god's other chief association is often with the sun, whose strong light is considered to be an aspect of masculine energy, and very much a necessity for the growth of all life. Now, many ancient cultures have worshipped the sky father and an earth mother in one guise or another, which modern day Wicca does emulate to a certain degree. Now, the mythology of the Wiccan wheel of the year generally revolves around the cyclical relationship between the god as the sun and the goddess of the earth, with the god continually dying each autumn and being reborn each spring, growing strong throughout the summer only to die again, which echoes the growth cycles of plant life both in agriculture and the wild, with the Holly King and the Oak King parable or mythology or that story, which I'll probably go into maybe next weekend a little bit more because I haven't done that yet. I don't think so. Now, a few deities who typically represent the sun god are the Celtic god Lu, the Greek god Apollo, and the Egyptian god Ra. Geb, or Jeb, is the husband and brother of the sky goddess Nut and father of her Osiris, Isis. I don't know what I was typing here. Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. He's imagined as a man with a goose upon his head, or as a man lying beneath the arch of the sky. Now, Odin is the one-eyed all-father of the Norse pantheon. His wife is Frigg, and she is the goddess of wisdom. And Odin generally carries out war and gives strength to his enemies. And Thor was actually more typically associated with peace and abundance than Odin was, and tended to be more of a primary god for the living. And now the king of gods is also considered the father of gods. Not always the case, but often. And so there's just a thought that I typed in here out of order. I need to be more awake when I do my notes, just saying. But again, good reason to come back to my notes. I can fix them later. So Bel, the name Bel comes from the Akkadian Belu, meaning lord or master. So it's generally a title or an epithet applied to many gods who may be identified as lord, including Enlil, Marduk, and Malak. So the feminine form is Belit, and so Bel is cognate with Baal, or Baal. There we go. Horus was considered an ancient Egyptian protector of the ruler of Egypt, and the pharaoh was considered to be the living incarnation of Horus. So after Osiris was murdered by Seth, Horus fought with Seth for the rule of Egypt. In the battle, he then lost an eye, and the eye of Horus became an important symbol of protection. So after the battle, Geb proclaimed Horus the ruler of the living. Jupiter is the next. In Roman mythology, Jupiter, or Jove, is the king of the gods and the god of the sky and thunder. So he's often been associated with Zeus in the Greek pantheon. So Zeus and Jupiter are often cross-associated. Nuada. So Nuada of Ergetlem, maybe? Not my language, of the Silver Hand, also spelled Nuadu or Nuada, was the god king of the Tuatha De Danann before they came to Ireland, and then actually for some time after. So Zeus was the Hellenic king of the gods who rules from his throne upon Mount Olympus, and he generally rules over the sky, thunder, contracts, and codes of hospitality. Let's see. And then the next one, I wanted to talk about the shaman archetype, because there is one. So we talked about shamans earlier, and so the shamanic archetype is also considered the psychopomp. Actually, is the guide of souls or the tender soul, and very similar to a psychotherapist or hypnotherapist. So they may do soul work or spirit work, that kind of thing. They also are often the storyteller, the myth maker, the sacred historian. Very, very much someone who works with the spirit guides, the power animals, the ancestral lineage, and our inner selves. They are very much they may have divine qualities such as love, peace, harmony, joy, and manifestation. Hold on. If I could type. So, of course, my next link didn't have the right information, but it's okay. So there are, the shamanic archetype, I guess, is that one. The next one was the Trickster. So tricksters are generally selfish and unreliable drifters. They may seduce women, drink too much, your crazy Uncle Sal, that kind of thing. They also solve problems with the rest of the community is to in the box to create a solution. They often bring laughter into our lives, and they make necessary change happen in a world that's generally just very, very resistant to change. So the trickster is also a god of learning. Learning the hard way, perhaps, like a lot of teenagers. But most of life's valued lessons do have to be acquired through experience, not necessarily textbooks. We may get the concept from the textbook, but actually drive the lesson home. Often we need to experience in real life, which is why you go to driver's ed. You may learn some stuff in the book in the classroom, but before you can get past driver's ed and get your license, you actually have to go out and drive the car. Just really serious. Now, often we fear tricksters because they force us out of our comfort zone. They do, and they challenge our ideas. And then when they're gone, we may really dislike them for breaking what we had, or love them for showing us something new. And even better, we're often resentful a bit of that learning process. Because, yeah, who wants to learn the hard way? We don't like being learned the hard way, but often that's the best way to learn. Where did my thing go? That rat. So, the tricksters are often, like Loki is probably the most well known or most well recognized trickster deity out there. And as I mentioned previously in different shows, I had issues with Loki. I didn't understand that he was actually teaching lessons. He wasn't just, the god of chaos and insanity. No, he's actually teaching things. And after doing some research and study, it's like, oh, I see. Oh, that makes sense now. So, it totally changed my thought process, which is what research is supposed to do. So Loki in Norse mythology is often a shape-shifting god who is portrayed as playful, nihilistic, and very self-serving. But in reality, he's teaching the other deities lessons that they may not want to learn. Anansi is an African deity. He is often sneaky, sly, but ultimately a benign spider god of mayhem. Benign mayhem, kind of like one of those oxymorons, yes. Kitsune or Kitsune is a Japanese mythology, and they're often trickster spirits that often appear as intelligent and mischievous foxes. So if you've ever had chickens and you've been in a region where there are foxes, they're very, 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 very good at getting into the chicken house to eat your chickens. So, very mischievous, very intelligent. So, and yes, coyote is a North American trickster, very much so. D. And yes, Renee, just real quick, I did take my mini Paisley to the doctor, so she's doing better. She's sleeping well and cuddled up with her stuffed animals and bottle of water, and just keep checking on her. So Ishu, so he was a Nigerian deity, and he's just the sneaky god of uncertainty and change. Krishna was a Hindu god, often portrayed as seductive, yet entertaining supreme being. Saci, as a Brazilian folklore, was often portrayed as a one-legged, malevolent prankster dwarf. So I could see how he may have some issues and want to beat people, being a dwarf with one leg. Hermes, so in Greek myth, he was the cunning and thieving messenger of the gods. So Hermes was often into mischief. So Yes, coyote is as the Native American mythology is very much a trickster being. Rabbit, I'm continuing to my list, Mr. Don. Like Brer Rabbit, fox, and raven. Ravens are also considered trickster animals just because they are quite mischievous. They are very, very prone to snatching your sparkly stuff, and but very, very intelligent also. The next, it would be the dark gods or goddesses. Um, they are often the archetype rulers over the darker aspects of life, particularly death, decay, and destruction. Now, dark gods or goddesses may also rule over the dark half of the year, like winter, and are often honored at festivals marking the change of seasons from summer to winter. And sometimes they're implicated in a cosmic battle between life and death, growth and decay, in which they overcome the powers of growth and rule for a while until the seasons change and the powers of life and growth gain the upper hand. Dark gods and goddesses are often identified with the darker aspects of human personality and the darker human impulses such as vengeance, jealousy, violence, wrath, that kind of thing, and may be evoked during explorations of your shadow self. So, when you're doing shadow work. Now, often the dark gods and goddesses are believed to travel or live in the company of the dead, ghosts, ancestors, and on occasion, dangerous, vengeful, and demonic entities. Now, it's not necessarily to mean that they are, evil themselves or necessarily scary. Sometimes they're just there to control those infernal creatures and protect mankind from them. Sometimes they're just simply guiding them to their next destination, also because they are also on a journey. And in the endless circle of death, decay, birth, and growth, the dark gods often serve as gatekeepers, keeping things orderly as the natural and necessary progression continues in the endless cycle, or the cycle of life, the wheel of life. Adad is the master of the earth, is a Mesopotamian storm god. He is also responsible for the destructive and the regenerative powers of nature. So his name came or may have originated from the Arabic hada, or to break, or hadat, also known as thunder. Adad is the son of Enlil or Anu and Ki, the twin brother of Enki and the consort of the goddess Shala, so of the Mesopotamian deities. Anubis is the Egyptian god of the dead and the embalming process. So he generally presided over the embalming process of everyone, but specifically when Osiris when he was killed by Seth. So priests would sometimes wear masks of Anubis when performing embalming rituals. Hades is the Greek god of the underworld, probably one of the more known deities or recognized deities. And this name relates to the Doric word eidos, meaning unseen. He was also known as Plauton. We'll go with that one. Meaning rich one, as his domain also includes all of the minerals that can be found beneath the ground and the riches they represent. So is that really a bad thing? Hecate, for many modern witchcraft traditions, Hecate is a dark goddess and often associated with the spirits of dead, ghosts, the dark moon, baneful herbs, curses, and black magic. For others, she's the crone goddess, ruling over the third stage of a woman's life and beyond her childbearing years, when she can focus on deepening the skills and information collected throughout her lifetime. When knowledge and experience is refined into wisdom, or wisdom highlights. So historically, Hecate has served many roles, and she's an incredibly ancient goddess with origins lost in the very mists of time. So yeah, she's been around for pretty much ever. She's definitely an elder god. Excuse me. So Nephthys is the ancient Egyptian protectress of the dead. She's the sister of Isis and Osiris and wife of Seth, and mother of Anubis. And so her name actually means Lady of the Mansion, which is kind of cool. I could see having a cat in my future named Nephthys. because that's kind of how cats behave. Osiris. Osiris is a Greek translation of the Egyptian word, which may have been pronounced Us-eri, which means throne of the eye. Persephone is the ancient Greek goddess of rebirth and the queen of the underworld. Now she spends the unfruitful time of the year in the underworld with her husband Hades and ascends to return to the site of her mother Demeter, the earth mother and goddess of abundant harvest, to preside over the sprouting of seeds and the blooming of flowers when the earth returns to fruitfulness. And her name generally means something like destroyer or murderer. Interestingly, Seth or Set is the ancient Egyptian god of disharmony and destruction. So he murdered Osiris and battled with Horus for the throne of Egypt. In earlier times, he was also associated with Egyptian royalty, and he is imaged as a man with the head of an animal, also known as the Set animal. Zolotl is the dog-headed god of the Aztecs, a companion to the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl, and he guards the sun on his journey through the underworld at night and is personified by the planet Venus. Yes, the Morrigan is also a dark deity, and a rumor has it that I will be having an interview, or at least conversation with someone who just wrote a book about the Morrigan, and I will include that on my Facebook page. Excuse me. So yeah, it's just kind of a lot going on with all the dark deities. So the Morrigan is kind of a mysterious figure, actually, in Irish mythology. Her name means phantom queen or great queen, and she's an older goddess from old Ireland and was associated with war, destiny, fate, and death. And she was a shapeshifter. I can't talk suddenly. And often appeared as a black crow, which is kind of an ominous sign for those who saw her prior to battle. And legend has it that the Morrigan was part of the triad of sisters, often named Bab, Macha, and Nemain, while the Morrigan is also remembered as the triad of the land goddesses Eru, Banba, and Fodla. Oh gosh, there's a bunch of things I can't really pronounce in here. So basically, she was just one of those scary people. And she also is a one-eyed individual in one of her personifications. She not necessarily gave it up for wisdom or in battle, but it was more a part of a disguise when she approached Cuchulainn, and she proposed to him, and he denied her, and there was a big battle and everything. And so when she approached him as the crone with the one eye, that's when he blessed her, and there's a whole lot of mythology there that I'll have to go into another time, because there's a lot to it. And I only have like 2 minutes left, and that's not enough time. It's an interesting story. Yes, D. Ravens and crows do eat death, but so do a lot of animals. Vultures, and actually the eagles have been known. Coyotes, foxes, wolves, all of those. So, but yeah, ravens and crows. I've always liked ravens and crows. I've always wanted a pet raven, but I think that's probably a bit more bird than I can have in my house. Yeah. So, did I miss anything? Just checking. Nope, nobody called in. Okay, cool. Duke is on next, so stay tuned for Duke on TFR. And let's see, email me. It's wildpaisley@gmail.com, and that's WILDEPAISLEY @gmail.com. The Etsy store is www.etsy.com/shop/Monarch Mountain Studio, and Mountain is MTN. And then the spaces between .live is the website. And I'll be working on some content tomorrow probably because with Minnie Peasley being sick, she's not moving around very much. And if she's slow, I can get other things done. She's just a very busy little girl. Oh my gosh. So I guess next week we will pick up on the archetypes just a little bit more because there's a few more out there. And actually, as far as the archetypes go, you can delve into them just about as deep as you could possibly imagine because there's an archetype for just about everything. So thank you very much for joining me tonight. And yeah, it's been great in the chat room. So thank you. Merry meet and merry part and merry meet again. And we'll see you next Friday. Stay tuned for Duke and have a great night.